Hello, this is Tom Styles, and this is Tom's Radio Room Show. My little minion is showing you my old Baofeng UV-5R. Now, I say old. I got this radio back in November of 2012. That's how long I've had this radio, and it served me well. And I've done a lot of reviews on this radio and the accessories for it, how well it can get into repeaters as far as distance covered and stuff like that. But there's a new version of this line, the UV-5R line, that's just come out, and the people at Brainy Deal on Amazon sent me one of the new versions for me to review. And we move my little minion out of the way here, and we use my hand to move over the old one and bring in the new kid on the block. This is the UV-5R5, the 2015 version. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go over the differences, because as I've looked over this radio, it's very much like the old one, but it has several improvements. And right now you can get these on Amazon from Brainy Deal for under $35. Now, what's included, and let me move this guy out of the way for a second. What's included is the radio, the battery, which I've already installed, the battery, the radio charger. With it, of course, it has an AC adapter, the manual, the earbuds and microphone adapter, and like I said before, a lot of the accessories you can get for these radios for the UV-5R, which you may have already bought, will work on this radio. They plug right in, no problem. Here is the, whoops, oh, I almost dropped it on the floor. This is the belt clip. I typically don't use belt clips because I typically put my radios in my shirt pocket when they're this size. Now, if they're larger, yes, that might use a belt clip. And then it gives you this little strap that you can add on if you want to. And so you get quite a bit of radio plus accessories. You know, it even includes a charger for less than $35. So let's look at these two radios, and I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit, move the camera around, but let me zoom in just a little bit. Where's that button? There we go. Move the camera down a little bit. My lighting is not the best in the world, and my camera is quite old, but we'll do what we can. If you first just look at these two radios, they look identical, but they're not. There's a lot of subtle differences in the design and layout, and they're just subtle differences, subtle improvements. And in the inside, the electronics, there's some improvements which are not obvious until you start using the radio. So, for instance, one thing that really jumps out at me is the UV-5R had this button down here, the band switch button, which would switch between the two amateur radio bands, the 2-meter band and the 70-meter band. That's all it did, just quickly switch between the two. You still have that function on this radio, but you don't have a separate switch for it. So that's one thing that, and this deletion of this switch was done before this model even came out. So it was deleted by Baofeng quite a while ago. Another obvious change is the grill. Not that it's a big deal, but the grill is slightly different as far as the hole pattern for the speaker is slightly different. Also, if you look at, I have to keep from kicking the camera. you look closely at the display, it's slightly different. See, this is straight across here. This goes down and up and down. Not a big deal. Let me turn both the radios on. This one's on. Let me turn them both on at the same time so you can kind of see this backlight, how it shows up. And I'm getting a glare on that one for some reason. But the display, I'd say his display is about the same. You've got the writing up here, again, not a big deal. It says dual band FM transceiver. Don't have that on there. On this one, not a big deal. The buttons on the side here are basically identical. No change there. They both have the little LED light on the top and the volume control on the top. Oops, got my big finger in the way and I knocked the camera down. Go back up here. And the knobs themselves are the same. Now, if you look at, and I kind of stand up, if you look at the antennas, they look identical. I physically, with my poor eyes, can't physically tell the difference, but they do indicate in the documentation that they've improved the internal workings of the antenna so the reception is better. Now, hopefully I can detect that difference when I do my field testing in the future. And I will be doing field testing of the new radio versus the old one. See if there's any difference as far as signal strength and how far a repeater I can get to recognize my transmission. Come over to this side, pretty much identical. There's a little tang for this guy here. That's the same. This is where the speaker, microphone, plug in, plus you use the same port for programming the radio. The battery pack looks identical. I can't really tell any difference from the battery packs. They're the same voltage and capacity, so they should be interchangeable, and the add-on battery packs that you can get should work with the new radio like it did with the old radio. The bottom here, I don't know if I got my arm in the way. The bottom looks, I would say, identical. Might have to look real closely, but it looks like it's identical. The charger tabs look identical. So that's kind of a trip around the two radios. To me, they pretty much look identical as far as look and feel, with the exception that scan back down here, the new one, and ones between these two, they dropped the band selection switch. To me, it's not a big deal. I never used it, so not a big deal. Okay, the other thing they have in their literature is that the reception, as far as eliminating noise and unwanted signals, has been improved with the newer radio. It's got a new, supposedly a new chip that does all that processing, and that has improved reception. Again, hopefully I can show that up when I do the field testing in the future show. If we go and look at the manual here real quickly, and I would assume, there's a website called MyCore, which has a lot of information about these radios, the Baofeng HT radios, not just the UV-5R line. And I assume that most of the information for the UV-5R that I have here is the same for this guy here, the UV-5R5. This is the 5. So I assume they're about the same. The other thing is, it's a little tedious to program this radio, especially if you're programming it for repeaters, where you have to put in the transmit frequency, you have to put in the receive frequency. If there's an offset, you have to put that in. If there's a tone that you have to use, you have to put that in. It's a lot of steps. So I quickly purchased the cable that connects this to your computer and got the free CHIRP, C-H-I-R-P software for doing the programming, and it makes it so much easier. So I would suggest that you do that, unless you're just going to put in a couple of frequencies. You do that, and it makes it life so much easier. Now, that in mind, I took my cable that I bought for this one, the old radio, and I hooked it up to the new radio. Plugged right in, connector's the same, and I attempted, using CHIRP, C-H-I-R-P, I attempted to download what was in this radio already. There was like maybe 6 frequencies already programmed in it. I downloaded those, no problem. And I was using the, UV-5R setup when I was trying to do this. So I've learned in the past that when they have new firmware, in other words, they've updated the microcomputer software in the radio, sometimes the CHIRP software will not work because they move things around a little bit. So in the past, when I used my other Baofeng radio, I think it's the B6 or something like that, I was able to just download download what was in the radio using the CHIRP software, and then I was able to take the file that I had made for this one, which has all 128 memory locations filled up, and I was able to load it back in. When I tried it with the UV-5R, it gave me an error message, which was not unexpected. So I thought, man, I hate to have to type in 128 memories with all their information about transmit, receive, all this stuff. It's just going to be a chore. I didn't do it originally. I'll have to confess, I didn't do it originally. A friend of mine did it originally, manually, went through in that program and typed all the information in. So he gave me his file, and I just modified it. I mean, like 3 or 4 little changes, and boom, I had the radio programmed. So I was hoping to do that with this radio, but I was doubtful because they told me or it said in the documentation for this firmware, or the software that programs it, that you may have problems programming using an old file from a radio that has old firmware, and it just may not work. And it didn't. I tried to load that file that I saved from this radio into this radio, did not work. So I was like, oh my gosh, I got to type all that stuff in. Well, it turned out, by accident, they have in that software, they have the capability of taking the file that you've made originally, and like I say, the file that was made for this one had all 128 memories filled, and save it, export it from the program in CVS, which is an Excel format, in a CVS format. Then you can go and reset the programming software so that it's familiar with this radio by just doing a download of the frequencies that's already in this radio, and then it knows now the format. Then you can import that CVS file that I was created when I exported the file from the format that was in this radio. Did I say that correctly? Anyway, I imported that CVS file, and boom, everything was there. Now, what the difference was is that in the Chirp software, besides the memories, there's all kinds of controls that you can change that the radio has, capabilities, options. You can change those too. And like what gets displayed on the screen when you first turn it on. For instance, and I'll see if I can show you that. Turn it back on, get my finger out of the way. I don't know if you saw that, but it had the first line was the same, the second line was Tom 2, and this is the software that what I programmed this one with is Tom 1, so that's how I could tell the difference. So I used those options from the radio that I downloaded and saved. Then when I did the import of the CVS file of the frequency data from this radio, it didn't disturb that other setup, those other options. It didn't disturb that. So then the software still knew everything about this radio. So then I said, okay, program this radio. Boom. It worked. Perfect. Not a single problem. Perfect. Oh, I was so excited, I almost peed my pants. Well, I think I did. Oh well. So now I have this radio programmed pretty much identical to this radio, except for some of those options. But as far as the memories are concerned, they are the same. So now when I do my field testing, I've got all the repeaters for the local area in both radios on the same memory location and everything, so it should make my testing easier. So I was so glad that that worked. So that's how you would use an existing file from your UV-5R and put it into your new radio, your UV-5R5. Not straightforward, but still, once you learn how to do it, it's easy, really easy, and much easier than programming these guys manually. So anyway, that's kind of the quick overview. Like I say, I'm not going to go into a lot of details because I have, I think, like 27 videos on this radio and the accessories for it, and it appears that the accessories for this radio will work with the new radio. So I want to thank Brainy Deal for sending me this radio for review. I will be doing in the future, not the next video, but in the future, I will be taking this in the field especially when the weather cools down. The other night we went to the baseball game and it was 97 degrees. So when the weather cools down a little bit, I'll go back out in the field, and I'll be doing a lot more field testing of radios once this temperature gets down and things are a little more comfortable. So if you enjoyed this show, please give me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.